Hello my loves, and I have a real treat for you today. The topic of this video is something that gets me really excited, and I feel like it's something that is not talked about a lot. So if any of you are really struggling to find your purpose, or you want to start stepping more into your authenticity and really discovering what it is that makes your heart sing, what those deep desires are within you, but you just find yourself in a place where you're really struggling to anchor those desires down, to really understand them and uncover them. I have got a really amazing tip for you today that is so easy, and it doesn't really require much effort at all. It just requires you to have a look at something that you're already doing. So, I want to share with you a story from my own personal life, to give you a bit of an idea how this works. So I wanted to pick up a new fiction book. I haven't read fiction for quite a long time. I tend to dive into non-fiction books, and there's a lot of knowledge and learning, but I thought, you know what, I really need something. I need something that's fantasy based. I need something that's going to just get my head into that other space. And so I kind of just put that desire out there and just waited to see really what the universe was going to bring back for me. And so I ended up Googling. So I tried to find romance fantasy. That is my like big go-to thing, is I love like epic fantasy, like romance novels and like Chinese dramas, all that kind of thing. That's my go-to. And so I kind of just found like someone who was doing book reviews, and there was this one series of books that really jumped out to me, and I have just finished it. So this is the third book. So this is going to give you goosebumps, because it's given me goosebumps just now finding this out. So this is the third book by Amanda Bouchette, and it's the Kingmaker Chronicles. And so I just went online I just typed in, like, something just said to me to type in her name into YouTube. And I saw this like little trailer. It was like a book trailer. And I thought it was a new series. So I've just finished this, and I was like, right, okay, I need to find something else to read. And I realized, so I watched it and I was like, hang on a minute, this kind of seems really familiar, this like storyline. And, is this like a new series that she's done? And it's actually the fourth book that's come out. So that's just answered my question of what I'm going to read next. It's the fourth one, which I didn't even know was available, because it kind of does end, this book particularly ends in a way that it can finalize it. But they've done like, she's done a fourth book to it. So how does this all relate to you finding out your desires and getting authentic with yourself, and really starting to tap into some of those hidden desires? Well, this book that I picked up, the main character in that book, her personality is so much like mine. And I did not just pick that book up. Like, nothing happens randomly, you're calling these desires in, and it's just that the universe is bringing these things to you in a way that is not always obvious a lot of the time. And so what I have found, by actually going through a lot of the books that I'm drawn to, a lot of the music that I'm drawn to, films, TV series, all those kinds of things that you binge, right? That's got a really bad word attached, a really bad like persona attached to it, doesn't it? Binge watching, or like binging anything, is like a really bad thing. But actually, what I have noticed in my own life is that those things that we binge watch, like even if things on social media, like books that we read, music that we listen to, films, like things that we just want to keep consuming, there's a message behind them. Like, there's a message that is trying to get out about why it is we keep feeling drawn back to something. But the reason why we kind of see this as being something that's really negative is because it can end up being a bit of an addiction. And also it feels like it's serving no purpose. And so I created a little while back a video all around binge watching. So I'll link it up here if you want to go back and watch that as well. But I tell you what, the insights that I have got about who I am as a person and what it is that I enjoy and the type of personality I am. So, this book was describing a story, like, it's a fantasy story. It's about like a lost like princess. She's a lost like queen effectively, and she's got all of this power inside of her. And she had quite a traumatic upbringing. And so she pushes that down. She basically suppresses all of her desires, all of her power. And she meets this man who helps her to find this sense of self-love. And, and she basically, like, the story goes through and she rekindles that connection with herself and how, and she starts to step into a place of empowerment with it. And this story, like, yes, okay, I'm not a long lost princess and I'm not in a fantasy world, but the character, like the profile of those characters is aligning to me. There's a reason why when I read through that book review list, that was the book that spoke to me. And actually I was meditating the other day and I was connecting with my spirit guides and I asked them about this, and they said to me, like, because there was a moment in the book when I was starting to get like a bit frustrated with the character. Like, she just needed to step into her power. Like, there was all these things that were like going wrong and all of these like things that she could have prevented, and how she was like really denying herself like joy and this fulfilling life that she could have, but she just could not step into her power. And it was so frustrating as a reader to like keep watching it. Like, she kept having all these trials that it was trying to like get her to like finally realize that power within her. And my guide said to me, there's a reason you're getting frustrated with that character, because that character it's not so much you, but it's like it's personifying where you're currently at. And that's why you're feeling the frustration, because you can sense the power that you have within you, like all of us do. And you've got the knowledge about how to get to it, but you're still at this stage where you're needing to go through the embodiment process to really feel that and to live that. And this has all come from reading a fantasy novel, So if you're struggling, then just look at what it is that you keep being attracted to. And the reason why I think things like binge watching, like books that we keep consuming, types of music that we keep being drawn to are such a good thing to look at is because we don't place any, those tend to be things that we go to for leisure. They tend to be things that we go to for fun, for enjoyment, for escapism. So, when you start saying things like, well, what's my purpose? Like, what's my career, for example? What should I be doing as a job? Then you start to get all these other ideas that come in around like what makes money and what doesn't. And, there's all these kind of like limiting beliefs and these limitations that start to come in thought form when we start to think that way. Whereas if we look at what it is that we are consuming for pleasure, for escapism, for entertainment, there's none of this attached to it. And so what you need to do is you need to look at what those things are you're being drawn to, and don't look at the surface level. Like, I'm not a long lost princess. Like, I can guarantee you that. Like, it's not that surface level story, and it's not that I want to be in some, fantasy, so for example, the things that I'm drawn to is I like a lot of historical, like fantasy romance. And for a long time, I was really like, why am I being drawn to this? Like, this is something I can't recreate in my life. I can't go back in time, or I can't, be in some fantasy world. But really, when I look at what's underneath those things, it's this sense of adventure. It's this sense of, finding your power and learning to wield your power. And it's just that these stories, are, it's a way to encapsulate those more spiritual desires that we have. And that's basically like when you take the Bible, that's what the Bible was. It was a collection of stories, and that's how spirituality was taught back then. It was through stories, because people didn't understand the intellectual side of it back then. Whereas obviously we do now more so, but really there's so much to be found in stories. There's so much to be found in what it is that you keep gravitating towards. So use this as a practice. Just go away, like journal on it, have a think on it, meditate on it, and just notice, become conscious of what it is that you keep being drawn to for your pleasure, for your entertainment, for that escapism. And then don't look at the surface level of it. Look what's underneath it. And also, this is another reason why so many of us end up going down the wrong path with this. So for me, with things like fantasy, it's very clear to see, okay, well, I don't want to go and slay a dragon, for example. But what is it that's like underneath it? What is it that story is, grabbing within me? But something like social media, that is a lot harder. And I'll give you another example of where this was how I didn't mess up, but this was how I kind of went down the wrong path because of following this. So there was a period of my life where I got really drawn to this idea of kind of doing up a van, traveling around the world, just living in like van life kind of thing. And I watched a lot of things on social media, a lot of things on YouTube, all about this lifestyle. And I started to kind of convince myself that the reason I was being drawn to this was because this was what I wanted to do. And so me and my husband kind of actually took the first step, and we didn't completely go like off grid, but we bought like a park home, which was kind of like a little bit more of a glorified like caravan. And we minimalized everything. We downsized everything. We were renting a 2-3 bedroom house at the time. And so we shifted and did that. But very quickly, once we got into that lifestyle, I realized that wasn't what I wanted. And so I had to question, but why was it I was being so drawn to it? And this was the reason, because it wasn't the surface level aspect that I was being drawn to. It was what, the people who displayed those lifestyles, it was the energy they were giving off. It was what was underneath it. It was this sense of adventure. It was this sense of kind of freedom, of being able to explore, simplifying things, minimalizing things down. That was what was appealing to me. But what I needed to do was translate what those things meant for me and my life, and what it was that I enjoyed. And downsizing and living off grid and all that kind of stuff, turned out that wasn't for me. But there was elements of what that lifestyle kind of brought that was appealing and that was attractive to me. So I think this is a really fascinating practice. Let me know in the comments, like what it is that you're being drawn to. Like, have you looked into this stuff? Have you become conscious of what it is that you're being attracted to? Even music, like what are the lyrics? Like what is it that it's, what are the emotions that it's creating within you? What is the feeling that it's creating? And we don't ever do anything for no reason. Like there's a reason we're drawn to things. It's just that we're not always consciously aware of why we've been drawn to that. And that was why it was so fascinating for me with this book, because at the time when I was like, okay, I want to read some fantasy, I'm going to look up some reviews. I found a book, right, I'm going to start reading it. I kind of got into it. And then it wasn't until I finished the third book that I realized why I was being drawn to it was because it was the story of this character was really displaying what it was, or a lot of the things I was going through in my life. And reading that out as a story helped me to kind of see myself from like this third person view, this like higher perspective, rather than being like in this, in my life, in my reality, with that very like narrow view, it allowed me as like a reader to see myself as a character in a story. So give this a go. Let me know what you think. Like, I think binge watching, like, I honestly think there's a lot of spiritual knowledge and in-depth understanding about ourselves and our desires to be had from binge watching, but you have to, you've got to go under the surface. Like, you've got to go deeper under it and really pick out what it is, like why you're being drawn to these things. And there will be a pattern, like for example with, for me, like I'm drawn to, fantasy and romance and a lot of historical things and stuff. Like, there's a pattern to the things that I gravitate towards and that I watch and want to consume and that I enjoy consuming. So don't see that binge watching is a complete waste of time. Like, see it as something that you can unpick. And then when you have one of those like binge watching sessions, or one of those sessions where you pick up a book and you just got to keep consuming it, just put that little conscious thought like in the back of your head and go, I wonder what it is that's really drawing me to this, and just see if the answer comes out. And I bet you will have some pretty deep insights come to you if you allow them to. So I just wanted to share that with you. Let me know how you get on with it in the comments, and I will catch you in another video. Take care. Bye.